prominent couple, respected in the community, are stabbed to death in their own home. Nothing about the case makes sense. Not the crime scene, the motive, or even the forensic evidence. Stabbing is a personal crime. There's often a relationship between the victim and the killer. A task force of agents and police quickly learn nothing about this case is usual.
Edna, New Hampshire is a small town. It's the kind of place where people trust their neighbors and leave their doors unlocked. A double murder shattered that trust and left the entire community terrified. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The FBI and local police work day and night trying to find a motive for the brutal crime.
January 27th, 2001, Etna, Vermont.
Hello?
At 6:30 p.m., Carol Johnson stops by the home of her friend Suzanne and Zantop. Carol's supposed to have dinner with the couple.
Suzanne?
It's not like them to forget a dinner engagement.
I'm here. Anybody home?
In the study, she makes a gruesome discovery. The room is in shambles. The friends are on the floor. Blood is everywhere. Seven minutes after receiving the dispatch, the Hanover police are on the scene. Eric Bates is a detective with the Hanover Police Department.
And I went into the door.
By the time I got there, some of the information had been relayed as to the nature of what had happened. That there were at least two bodies.
Carol tells police that the victims were both prominent professors at nearby Dartmouth College. Zantop was an earth sciences professor. His wife Suzanne was the chair of the German Studies program. Carol is their colleague. They'd invited her for dinner at 6:30 that evening.
All right, good to see you guys. See you tonight.
The Zantop house was extremely neat, orderly, clean. Nothing was out of place. There was a two-level home, no basement. Check upstairs. The house hadn't been secured, and so that's when myself and one of the patrol sergeants went through the house and systematically cleared the house to make sure that the killers weren't still in the house for some reason. I can tell you I've never seen anything as horrific as the scene itself in the study of the Zantop home. Even with my military experience then and even now, nothing would compare to the scene that night. It was potentially a murder-suicide. And if not, and it was a double homicide, it appeared to me as though they were preparing a light meal. It was my impression that they were actually preparing a lunch and not a dinner.
Although the bodies were discovered at dinner time, Bates suspects the Zantops died early that afternoon before lunch, and that the couple has been dead for several hours.
There was so many valuables in that house that we wouldn't have even begun to know what was missing. We discovered some blood droppings and a bloody boot print, what appeared to be a boot print anyway, on the floor. It was right next to the Zantop's fireplace, and it's a wood fireplace.
Bates' first concern is to preserve the evidence.
The closest thing that was nearby was some kindling wood, some small kindling. So I basically cordoned off each blood dropping or footprint that I could find in hopes that later they could be analyzed.
The Hanover Police is a small-town department. They have limited resources. They'll need all the help they can get if they're going to solve this terrifying and puzzling crime. Because of the size of the Hanover PD, the Major Crimes Unit of the New Hampshire State Police comes in to investigate the murder.
We're one of the few departments that have a full-time homicide unit.
Sergeant Mark Mudget is the lead investigator with the Major Crimes Unit of the New Hampshire State Police.
Sergeant Mudget, we have probably a lot more experience than a lot of the local departments in being able to handle investigations of this magnitude.
All right, guys, here's the...
The investigators analyze the study, the primary crime scene.
As you look at the crime scene, if you're patient enough and you're willing to look, stop, and listen and take in all that information, positioning of the bodies, the physical evidence located inside that room, if you listen, that body will speak to you. It will tell you what happened. It will give you clues as to how it happened. It will tell you potentially who may have committed this particular crime.
Suzanne Zantop's body was lying near the door of the study. Her husband's body was further in the room. An upturned chair was at his feet, and 2 other chairs were set up near the desk. It looked like a conversation had taken place in the room. Near the 2 chairs, police make a startling discovery.
We got something under here.
As we started to process the inside of the study area, we immediately came across 2 black tactical-style knife sheaths. These knife sheaths were approximately 9 to 10 inches in length. Both of them were identical.
Police assume the missing knives were used to kill the Zantops. They could be the murder weapons, and 2 murder weapons could mean 2 killers. In the living room, they follow the blood trail leading from the study to the front door. Tom Pfeiffer is the director of the New Hampshire State Police Forensic Laboratory. He is relieved to see that the blood evidence has been carefully preserved.
This is a highly unusual and actually some of the best part of preserving the crime scene that could have occurred. This eliminated people entering the crime scene from actually stepping and obliterating or contaminating the footwear impression evidence.
Sergeant Mudget notes that the front door is unlocked. There is no sign of forced entry into the house. Right now, all the investigators have are a few answers and a growing list of questions.
Did they invite the perpetrator or perpetrators into this? Or the questions that continue to go through your mind are, is this somebody that's known to the Zantops?
Near the fireplace, Pfeiffer finds the bloody boot print.
I wanted to enhance those impressions for better comparison purposes. I processed those with a blood enhancement reagent referred to as leuco crystal violet, or LCV. Upon application of the LCV, the impression was further enhanced to the point where it was going to be able to be used in identification purposes.
Once a suspect is in custody, the boot print could be important evidence for prosecutors. In 2001, Mike Delaney was the Assistant Attorney General for the Homicide Unit of the New Hampshire Attorney General's Office.
In New Hampshire, anytime a suspicious death is discovered, there's an immediate notification to prosecutors who are immediately dispatched to the scene to help the investigators with the case. In this case, our victims were loved and esteemed professors from an Ivy League college campus, and that made this case very unique. It was clear that the level of violence that had been inflicted on the Zantops was over and above anything that was necessary for the purpose of carrying out a crime, including a potential killing. In that regard, it had the hallmarks of a crime of passion, of somebody that acted out with a level of violence that was personal in nature.
In addition to the unlocked door, the extreme violence of the murders, it appears to be what investigators call overkill, is more evidence that the Zantops might have known their killers. If the killers knew their victims, then police are looking for someone who hated the Zantops enough to brutally stab them to death. Whoever committed this crime is a cold-blooded killer and must be stopped. But police must find them first. To do that, they need a motive, something to explain this heinous crime. In Etna, Vermont, 2 prominent professors are murdered, stabbed to death in their own home. Investigators suspect whoever killed the Zantops will try to leave town as soon as possible. They check the local airport, the bus station, and finally a local cab company.
How about that right there?
According to the dispatcher, one of the drivers picked up a local college student the night of January 27th. It was late, after midnight. The student was going to Manchester Airport. Investigators quickly established the student flew home due to a family emergency. With no other leads, they assume the killers either left town by car or are still somewhere in the area. By morning, the double homicide is headline news. The Zantops were prominent citizens. According to the medical examiner's office, wounds on the Zantop's body are consistent with a tactical combat knife. Mark Mudget is assistant commander of the Major Crime Unit for the New Hampshire State Police.
Based on the injuries that we found on Half and Susanna at the time of autopsy, they had both sustained numerous stab wounds. Susanna had been stabbed 11 times and Half had been stabbed 10 times in various portions of their body. Their throats had been cut. Stabbing is a very personal crime. It's not something that you can accomplish at a distance of 12, 13, 14 feet like you can with a firearm. A stabbing is something that's a very personal crime. You have to get up close to the individual to be able to affect the damage that the offender wants to affect on these people.
Once again, the evidence suggests the Zantops knew their killers. The knife sheaths are now investigators' best clue to finding them. Tom Pfeiffer is the director of the New Hampshire State Police Forensic Lab.
There were fingerprints developed on the back of one of the knife sheaths left in the Zantop study. We then searched those fingerprints through the fingerprint identification system in our laboratory.
Investigators searched the NCIS database, comparing fingerprints found on the knife sheaths to a database containing the fingerprints of known offenders. They can't find a match.
The fact that we did not receive a match back from the fingerprint search leads us to several different conclusions. One, the person is not in the database, which means they haven't been arrested. Two, the fingerprints were such a quality that was not able to make a match with the computer. Or three, the person could have been arrested, however, the fingerprints, for some reason or another, did not make it into the database.
Police turned to their next best clue, a bloody boot print found at the scene.
We had to collect all the footwear evidence from everyone that entered the scene. There were about 14 pairs of footwear of personnel that had been into the crime scene. We collected all those pieces of footwear from the neighbors to the EMTs to the medical examiner to our own Attorney General's office.
Good impression of that. Great impression.
The forensics lab is able to eliminate all 14 pairs of footwear. Pfeiffer suspects the boot print belongs to one of the killers.
I scanned a photograph of this particular footwear impression at the crime scene, emailed that image down to the FBI laboratory in their footwear section, asked them to do a search of their database that contains thousands of outsole pattern designs.
The FBI lab tells Pfeiffer that the footwear impression was made by an upscale brand of hiking boots. It's a good clue, but until investigators have a suspect, it's meaningless.
There's an awful lot of information that has to be processed once you take part in processing the crime scene and the physical evidence. That's just one aspect of this investigation, or any investigation. Now you have to start seeking out persons for information.
In this case, that was quite a challenge. Everyone knew Huff and Suzanne Zantop. They had extensive faculty connections. They had hundreds of students that were in classes with them.
Investigators head to the college where the Zantops worked to learn all they can about their victims.
So realistically, our investigation just blew up in 360 degrees. You had to just start putting your feelers out. You had to start generating leads. You had to start interviewing a lot of people on campus, off campus, relatives, neighbors.
Altercations with anyone?
Well, maybe about a couple of days ago.
During the course of the interviews that we were doing on campus, we generated a person of interest who was a student of Hal Zantop's.
Can you tell me what that was about?
No, because they spoke Spanish.
According to a student, Half Zantop argued with one of his students just days before he was murdered.
We're going to wrap it up for today. Professor Huff, yo necesito hablar para mi clave en mi clase de... Una tarea aquí. Yo necesito para mi graduación.
Police questioned the student.
It was reported to us that he had an extensive knife collection.
What kind of knives are they? They're collector's items.
When we conducted the actual interview with the individual, we also noted that he had sustained a recent abrasion to his head. So we were hoping that we were, onto something.
Why do you want to see my hand? Because I want to see your hand.
The student voluntarily submits to questioning. He tells police he'd been friendly with Half Zantop ever since he took the professor's earth science class.
We have witnesses who told us
He explains he was just joking around with Professor Zantop.
we were laughing in Spanish.
Investigators look into the student's background, but he has a solid alibi on the day of the murders. He could not have killed the Zantops. Police also investigate the Zantops' relationships with their colleagues.
Popular professors on the campus.
On campus, they learn that Half Zantop had recently been given a position instead of another professor.
Recently, in the last.
We had to travel out to where the gentleman lived in the western part of the United States to interview him because he had come and gone from the Hanover area out about the time that the homicide had occurred or shortly thereafter.
The professor's car is impounded. There appear to be blood stains in the trunk. Analysis reveals that the stains are not blood. According to the owner of the vehicle, they were made by stew that spilled in the trunk. While investigators follow every lead, two detectives work to try and find the murder weapons. They visit retail stores in the area that specialize in knives.
The scabbards that we had, the knife sheaths that we had, were produced for one type of blade, one type of knife. The blade itself is really a paramilitary or a tactical type of tool. Our armed forces use them. A lot of police agencies utilize them. This is not something that is a tool that's going to be used by the average hiker or the average individual.
6 days after the killings, the knife manufacturer supplies New Hampshire authorities with a list of all authorized retailers and distributors in the country, broken down by state. In addition, there are hundreds of dealers nationwide that sell the knives on the internet.
Based on the research we did with the manufacturer, we were able to determine that we were going to have to track down approximately 5,000 blades and knives, scabbards, that were produced and distributed worldwide. We didn't have a considerable amount of manpower to be able to do that.
The investigators need help and call in the FBI. At the time, Brian Fitzell was a special agent assigned to the Bedford, New Hampshire resident agency of the FBI.
They knew that it would encompass different states and even international because of the nationality of the Zantops. So they knew that they'd be reaching well outside of the New Hampshire borders and wanted us to be able to help with those kind of leads.
Along with state and local police, the FBI joins the Hanover Task Force.
This was front page news, and consistently the state police, the attorney general, was asking anyone with information, please call. And the volume of leads that were coming in were tremendous. You know, phone calls, people calling in with information.
The FBI deploys Rapid Start, a computer system. It is a database designed to track hundreds or even thousands of leads.
In any type of investigation, you need to keep your peripheral vision open. You don't want to miss anything. If you're too quick to focus in on one area, you start to disregard other telltale signs or other signs that you may or may not be on the right track.
As investigators struggle to make sense of their case, all over the country, media coverage of the case explodes. For law enforcement, the pressure is on to find a pair of brutal killers. In New Hampshire, 2 Ivy League professors have been brutally murdered in their own home. Investigators review the evidence again.
But again, it's sloppy.
They're trying to determine if the Zantops were targeted. It doesn't appear that they were. A knife is too clumsy a murder weapon for an assassination. Also, the killers made amateurish mistakes. If the murder had been planned, why would they leave behind the knife sheaths, a footprint, and even a fingerprint? Ironically, despite the evidence found at the scene, they're beginning to question whether the Zantops had any connection to their killers at all. Supervisory Special Agent Brian Fitzell.
It was looking, as this progressed more and more, that it was not an acquaintance that committed these acts.
Investigators can also rule out robbery. According to the initial investigation, nothing was taken from the house.
It was a murder scene that didn't match a lot of the known or the experience that most of these investigators have worked many homicides. It didn't fit into their normal model. It wasn't apparent that there was any motive other than the killing itself. It was as if these people were killed and the culprits ran right out the door.
Agents contact the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group in Quantico, Virginia. Investigators want to understand how these killers' minds work. They turn to the profilers.
They'll actually see hundreds of homicide cases during a year, and so they actually develop an expertise and they can see patterns because they see so many cases.
Supervisory Special Agent Jim Fitzgerald is a criminal investigative analyst, a profiler. He finds the case unusual.
We have 2 low-risk victims who are killed in their own house in broad daylight on a Saturday, nonetheless, when other people ostensibly in the neighborhood are home.
This is the crime scene. It appears that
Fitzgerald notes that the position of the chairs makes it appear as if an impromptu conference was going on prior to the murders.
The only thing that's in the doorway.
It was agreed upon with the investigators in the room and myself that it looks like there may have been at least several minutes in which there was some sort of conversation between Hoff and one or both of the offenders. It seems that the offender or offenders, and we were leaning towards 2 offenders at this point, were mission-oriented in that when they came into the house, their purpose was to kill Mr. and Mrs. Zantop.
The murder weapon, a pair of combat knives, is particularly troubling.
The use of a weapon in a homicide is very significant to your type of offender. If it's a cheap Saturday night special as opposed to a very expensive pistol with a silencer, that tells you have 2 different sort of offenders there. And on the other end of the continuum, on even a lower end of the continuum, if someone's using a knife, that tells you a lot about your offender too.
been able to determine what type of knife it actually was. It's like a...
The fact that the killers used knives and left behind crucial evidence tells him they are either sloppy or unsophisticated. Investigators suspect that the Zantops either knew their killers or allowed them into the house for some unknown reason. Fitzgerald is starting to get a picture of the killers, but the extreme level of violence troubles him.
When we're seeing a case that it makes no sense for various reasons, from a profiling perspective, we automatically hit the default to youthfulness. We just may have someone here youthful, that the motivation is not about money, the motivation is not to get back to somebody or even up a grudge. It's, hey, we're youthful and our filtering system in our brain hasn't kicked in yet, so I know, let's go out and just hurt or kill someone.
He fears he may be looking at some kids who killed just for the thrill of it.
That went bad.
On February 9th, a list of the killer's post-offensive behavior compiled by the FBI profilers is released to the public. Investigators ask the public to recall if they noticed anyone exhibiting odd behavior around the time of the murders, or changing their appearance, missing work, or having unexplained injuries or bruises on the hands or arms. Calls pour into the task force. None of the leads pan out. After 2 weeks of non-stop work, investigators have hit a dead end. Nothing about the Zantop murder makes sense. Seems like a crime without a motive. With each passing day, the community becomes more desperate. 2 murderers are at large, and law enforcement still has no idea why they chose the Zantops and who their next victim might be. In New Hampshire, a task force of state and local police and FBI agents tried to determine why someone murdered 2 Dartmouth professors in their own home.
There was no discernible motive that we could come up with as to why these people would be killed.
Supervisory Special Agent Jim Fitzgerald is an FBI profiler assigned to the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit.
We were told initially that there was nothing missing from the house. We found out about a week or so later that, in fact, something was missing from the house.
Agents learn Half Zantop always carried a wallet, and his wallet has never been recovered.
Prior to us learning that the wallet was missing, it almost appeared like a motiveless crime.
Now that they know one of the victims' wallets is missing, it changes everything.
We said this could be a little bit different now, and this may have been a quote-unquote simple robbery gone very, very bad.
Gentlemen, I just have some new information.
If the motive was indeed robbery, investigators have only a handful of clues found at the scene. 2 unidentified fingerprints, an unidentified bootprint, and 2 empty knife sheaths. The task force focuses on the knife sheaths and finding the murder weapons.
There's really a point in an investigation where you provide the behavioral work as much as you can, and then you have to sit back and let the gumshoe work take place.
Check this out.
Working with the manufacturer, investigators work to track down the sale of 5,000 combat knives all over the country.
Okay. This is all the dealers of that variety? It's about 5,000 of them.
In addition to questioning retail dealers in the area, investigators research dealers who sell combat knives over the internet. On February 14th, they contact an internet retailer in Massachusetts. Supervisory Special Agent Brian Fitzel.
2 of the knives had been purchased by an individual in Vermont within, 20 miles of the crime scene.
Bells started going off and flags were raised that we may have a good break here.
The purchase of 2 identical combat knives is an extraordinary lead. Investigators follow up immediately. The 2 knives were purchased by a man named James Parker. He lives across the state line in Chelsea, Vermont. Mark Mudget is assistant commander of the Major Crime Unit for the New Hampshire State Police.
When we made the initial contact with the occupants of the home, we were somewhat shocked at the fact that it was purchased by a juvenile. Jimmy,
James Parker is only 16 years old.
What's going on? You James Parker? Yes. We want to talk to you about some knives.
James Parker had indicated that he had bought 2 knives at that time, that he'd bought one for himself and one for a friend of his, a gentleman by the name of Robert Tulloch, that they had purchased the knives so they could use them while they were rock climbing.
Oh, well, when we
Detectives asked Parker where the knives are now.
So we took them to a local Army and Navy.
He tells them the knives were big. The boys decided they were too heavy for rock climbing and sold them at an Army-Navy store.
The trooper said that the hair on the back of his neck was standing up because when he started this interview, he had the feeling that this was not a legitimate story.
Investigators asked Parker if he'd be willing to answer a few questions at the police station.
Is it okay if I tag along? Be fine.
Parker agrees to be interviewed.
There you go, son.
And then the investigators went to interview his partner. And again, same story that didn't really measure up.
What happened to the knives?
Me and my
17-year-old Robert Tulloch corroborates Parker's story.
We realized that the knives were too heavy for us, so...
The knives were too heavy. The boys sold them for $60 apiece to a stranger at the Army-Navy store in Burlington, Vermont.
60 for both.
Do you have any kind of footwear, shoes, boots, anything like that?
Investigators are immediately suspicious. Tulloch's statement is not just close to Parker's, it's virtually identical.
I'd like to have him come downtown, make a formal
It's as if the two boys memorized their statements beforehand.
as a suspect, but we need you to sign this form giving us permission to do that. Is that okay?
Then the detective notices something chilling.
He noticed that the footwear was the make and model of the hiking boot that we were looking at. So, I mean, he knew very early on this was probably somebody involved in this crime scene.
They want to take you down to headquarters.
He did a very good job of maintaining the interview because this was, no arrest warrants were in hand. He went out there to find out about the knives and then very quickly realized that he was dealing with one of the murderers right there.
Robert Tulloch agrees to accompany detectives to the Chelsea Sheriff's Office to be fingerprinted. Despite investigators' suspicions, without solid evidence to support an arrest warrant, they are unable to detain Tulloch or Parker. Deputy State Attorney General Mike Delaney.
They had no prior history with criminal activity. They cooperated with the police when they arrived. They voluntarily provided information and fingerprints and shoes.
He's free to go.
They place a late-night call to Tom Pfeiffer, the director of the New Hampshire State Police Forensic Laboratory.
I received a telephone call at 12 o'clock midnight requesting my assistance to the laboratory to do a comparison between a pair of boots that were recovered from a suspect in this case to those impressions that were developed at the crime scene.
In order to obtain an arrest warrant, investigators need proof that Robert Tulloch's boots match the bloody boot print found at the crime scene.
The pressure that was surrounding this particular case was enormous. I've never worked in a case in our state that had this much amount of pressure. If anything, it caused us to actually step back and recheck and double and triple check our work before we let anything out of this laboratory. This is your career on the line. If you make one misidentification, you might as well leave the world of forensics behind because you could never do another case.
Dr. Pfeiffer compares an impression taken from Tulloch's boots to an impression taken at the Zantop house.
About 3 o'clock in the morning, a colleague and myself made a match between the impressions left at the crime scene and the boots that were taken from the suspect.
The fingerprints collected from the scene match Parker's.
We knew that we were dealing with our murderers, and the two murderers knew that as well because after the state troopers left, these kids left that night. They got together and fled. So they gave fingerprints and footwear and then went into fugitive mode.
After weeks of searching, agents and police finally identify their suspects, only to lose them. Two deadly teenage killers are now on the loose. Forensic evidence has implicated two teens, James Parker and Robert Tulloch, in a brutal double murder.
Detective Eric Bates with Hanover Police
Armed with
Department.
warrants, police travel to the boys' homes.
To check your house if you don't have a problem.
Both of them live with their parents in the small town of Chelsea, Vermont.
No, I really don't. I have no idea.
When we got into Chelsea that morning, and it was early in the morning, we had learned that they had both fled during the night, telling each other's parents that they were both going to be with the other family.
Detective Eric Bates questions Robert Tulloch's parents. They have no idea where their son is.
It was difficult to deal with the parents of these killers. Knowing the information that we had, you learned that the family members were good people and that, unfortunately, their children had become murderers.
In Tulloch's bedroom, investigators make a crucial discovery. Inside a cardboard box, they find two combat knives.
Got him. Oh, good.
In their statements, Parker and Tulloch claimed they sold the knives to a stranger. Investigators have found the murder weapons. Mike Delaney is a deputy attorney general working with the homicide unit.
Once we had the knives in the bedroom, it was pretty clear what we were dealing with, and at that point, I think everyone had solidified the opinions that they, in fact, were involved directly in committing these crimes.
This is where we are. The problem is that Hanover...
The case transformed once Parker and Tulloch had fled. They had shifted gears, basically, from an investigative trying to ferret out who had caused this now to an actual pursuit. The momentum increased, the intensity increased, but it gave us a great deal of satisfaction that we were able to identify who the perpetrators were in this crime.
A bolo, or be on the lookout, is issued for two teenage boys driving a silver 1987 Audi. They are wanted for questioning in connection with the Zantop murders.
You never know what's inside the mind of a person, what they're actually going to do when confronted, but certainly from a law enforcement perspective and for the general public's sake, you have to assume the worst in that regard, and we did. An axiom by which we live in the profiling business is that past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So by all means, these two were considered armed and dangerous, and all the relevant agencies and states that were contacted were told that, be very careful when confronting these two, because they've killed already.
Parker and Tulloch's pictures appear in newspapers and on television throughout the country.
The FBI issued the UFAP, the unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, to help us in our fugitive investigation. What that allows is the FBI can turn up a lot of resources on a UFAP.
In Massachusetts, a state trooper finds an abandoned car at a truck stop. It is a silver 1987 Audi. The trooper calls in the license plates. Within minutes, he knows that the car belongs to James Parker. Agents converge on the truck stop. An employee remembers seeing two clean-cut teenage boys asking truckers for a ride to California.
They were both looking for rides, I think.
According to the truck stop employee, one of the boys had dark hair. He wore it spiked. The other boy was blonde. They called themselves Sam and Tyler.
Yeah, that's cool.
We were able to effectively narrow the time of our trail to their original leaving of the vehicle in Sturbridge, Massachusetts rest area.
In Sturbridge, the two boys hitched a ride with a husband and wife trucking team. They dropped the boys off at another rest stop.
It's determine what type of truck they left in from there, based on those aggressive application of FBI resources, immediately sending people to these rest areas.
The FBI moves fast. They notify trucking companies and dispatchers that the 2 teenage boys are wanted. They are believed to be armed and dangerous. Authorities learn the 2 teenage boys might have been spotted at a truck stop in Columbia, New Jersey. According to witnesses, they hitched a ride with another trucker.
We were narrowing the chase because as our information was getting better, it was clear to us where we thought they were heading.
Agents notify police all over the region that the fugitives seem to be heading west. February 19th, 4 a.m. 3 weeks after the double homicide, the sheriff in Newcastle, Indiana, listens to the chatter on his CB radio. He hears a trucker ask if somebody can give a ride to 2 boys from New Jersey. They want to go to California. He does not reveal he is a police officer and quickly tells the trucker he'd be happy to give the boys a ride. He instructs the trucker to drop them off at a nearby truck stop. The officer speeds to intercept them. According to the bolo, the suspects are armed and dangerous. Along the way, he calls for backup. He may have found the killers. In Indiana, a sheriff attempts to trap 2 teenage fugitives at a truck stop. 16-year-old James Parker and 17-year-old Robert Tulloch are both wanted for the brutal slaying of 2 prominent professors. At the truck stop, the officer asks the 2 boys for their names.
What's your name?
Tyler J. Jones.
Tyler J. Jones. What's the J stand for?
Jeffrey.
For Tyler Jason Jones?
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey. Okay. Where are you from?
We're from Encino, California.
Can you spell that?
E-N-S.
How about you? What's your social security number? All right, love it. You don't remember it right now? Hold on a second. Copy that. I've got the description. That's you? You heard that? We've got the suspects here. We identified themselves. Guys, hold the camera in the car.
He takes Parker and Tulloch into custody.
Cooperation and future testimony we're looking at.
James Parker was brought back to the state of New Hampshire along with Robert Tulloch. Adult certification hearing was commenced against James Parker, and he was ultimately deemed to stand trial as an adult for the murders of Zantop and Suzanne Zantop.
Just to steal some money.
Once he was certified as an adult,
Steal cards and credit card information.
James Parker's attorneys approached the state of New Hampshire in wanting him to offer testimony against Robert Tulloch.
James Parker ended up cooperating with law enforcement and was interviewed extensively by the New Hampshire State Police and the Attorney General's office.
James Parker pleads guilty to a reduced charge, accomplice to second-degree murder. In exchange, he agrees to testify against his best friend. He tells police the chilling tale of what happened on the day the Zantops were murdered.
Try something.
What materialized is the fact that these 2 guys were bored with their life in Vermont, that they envisioned going to Australia or some far-off place. They originally decided that they were going to rob somebody and take their ATM card or something to that effect, take $10,000 and fly to Australia.
Hey, I've got a question. Our car
They
broke down.
came up with the idea of knocking on somebody's door and saying that they had car trouble, can we come in to use your phone? And when
I don't think so.
they tried this in Vermont, the person felt very strongly that these two were up to no good and slammed the door in their face and said, "Get off my property." He was very close to being a victim of that. Well, when their pretext for broken car didn't meet with good results, they changed it to students conducting a survey for their school.
Hey, we're doing a school.
So they showed up at the Zantop's house totally at random, and unfortunately, the fact that Hoff and Susanna were college professors led them to be very open and trusting of students and invite them into their home. And in the office environment where Hoff was murdered, it was clear that he was sitting at his desk conversing with these two students who were writing their pretend notes and interviewing him, and and then the signal was given to murder him in cold blood right in his office.
Suzanne and Half Zantop were teachers.
Is your wife the only person in this house?
They believed in helping students.
Okay. Well, how long have you been married and what do you do?
Tragically, their dedication led to their deaths.
You know what?
Deaths at the hands of two teenagers who agents suspect may have killed simply for the thrill of it.
Their goal was to commit a violent act, and the Zantops just happened to be in the wrong place, in the wrong time, in their own home. And how unfortunate is that?
When these perpetrators were interviewed after the fact, one of them made the admission that they had realized that they had left the sheaths and had given thought about coming back to the house to retrieve them. And I believe that they said when they went past the house, with that in mind, the police presence was already there.
Investigators are searching for some way to explain why Tulloch and Parker murdered the Zantops so brutally. FBI profiler James Fitzgerald sees this type of random violence as part of a terrifying trend.
We live in a different society today. Even in our youthful culture, they're constantly exposed to violence. And I believe Parker and Tulloch fit right into that category. The motivation's not to get back to somebody or even up a grudge. So I know, let's go out and just hurt or kill someone. And we're seeing more and more of that, unfortunately.
When you left there that night, where did you guys go?
We spent considerable amount of time with him, several days, as he went through how he and Robert Tulloch had concocted and eventually perpetrated this crime. He showed no signs of emotion, no signs of remorse for what he had done.
I stabbed the Zantops.
They were from more or less a middle-class environment, low crime area. Did not have some of the pitfalls that maybe others may be forced to experience in lesser environments. But nonetheless, there was a dysfunctionality about them. And when their chemistry was mixed, a violent outcome was apparently inevitable.
Investigators will never know what it was about the two boys and their chemistry that triggered such rage. In April 2002, James Parker is convicted of second-degree murder. He is sentenced to 25 years in prison. Robert Tulloch is convicted of first-degree murder. He is sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole.
As crack cocaine tore through Washington, D.C., a drug gang fought to take control.
What up? Man, papers at
Authorities fought back with everything they had. But gang members used any means to avoid prosecution. As the violence raged out of control, law enforcement would take back the streets.
In the early 1990s, Washington, D.C. became the murder capital of the nation. Few were left untouched by gang violence, which was ignited by the drug trade. By 1994, that violence would strike at the very heart of law enforcement. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office, who would fall to the FBI to lead an international manhunt and bring in the leader of the city's most vicious gang.
October 26, 1994. The nation's capital was about to become the backdrop to another bloody crime. Just before midnight, 3 masked gunmen broke into a home in the northwest section of the city.
Get up! Get up! Get up! Now! Get up!
They targeted Gerald Gaither, demanding his cash and drugs.
Where's the money? Where's the money? Where's the money? Where's it at? Where's the money?
He turned over what little money he had in his pockets.
Get up!
The owner of the home, William Ragland, was accosted while working in his basement.
Where's the money at? Get out here.
Upstairs, one of the gunmen discovered Nancy Hatchett and Darlene Hatchett, Ragland's daughter and granddaughter.
Get out there. Into the room. Go!
To convince Gaither to cooperate, the gunmen terrorized each of the residents.
Get out! Get out!
The women were ordered to lie face down on the floor.
Get out! Hands out! Tell us, come on, old man. Come on, old man. Tell us where the money is. Where is it? Where is it?
Gaither denied having more cash or drugs.
Put your hands down now.
One of the gunmen turned his .22 caliber handgun towards Ragland. The 89-year-old retired federal worker died instantly.
Tell us where it is. Play games.
Andre Madison, another resident, was hustled into the living room.
Shut up.
One of the 3 attackers noticed his gold necklace and ripped it from his neck.
Get down. Get out. Get out. Face down. Face down. Where's the money? Shut up. Shut up.
Though one man was dead, Gaither still refused to cooperate.
Get out. Get out. What are you doing?
Enraged, one of the gunmen began shooting the residents. The robbery attempt collapsed into murder. The trio quickly fled the house. One of the attackers vomited near the back door. Nancy Hatchett called 911. Officers from D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department quickly arrived at the house, located in a known drug area. Inside, 3 people were dead. William Ragland, his granddaughter Darlene Hatchett, and Gerald Gaither. Pictures were taken of each body, and shell casings were collected. Outside, police discovered vomit near the door.
Hey, how you doing?
Nancy Hatchett and Andre Madison, the only survivors, tried to help police develop suspects. But the attackers were masked, making identification difficult.
Okay.
For Metropolitan Homicide Detective Anthony Brigadini, a check on victim Gerald Gaither suggested a possible motive.
The main victim of the triple was a drug dealer in the First and Kennedy Street area. The guy drove flashy cars, had nice clothes, had a lot of money. When the drug dealer was unable to give them enough money and or drugs, things started to get a little harried, and that's when the shootings occurred inside.
Neighbors told police that after hearing gunshots, they saw a dark-colored sedan with a loud muffler leaving the area. An all-points bulletin was issued for the vehicle and 3 men inside. One hour after the murders, 2 D.C. cops spotted a noisy vehicle that fit the report. Noticing 3 men inside the vehicle, the officers pulled over the gray Oldsmobile. The police asked the men for identification. The driver was identified as Benny Lee Lawson. The passengers were determined to be Moat and Germaine Graves. In one of their pants pockets, police recovered a broken gold necklace. But details from the murder scene were still incomplete. To the officers, the necklace was meaningless. After recording all of the men's names and addresses, the 3 were soon released. There was no evidence in the car to connect them to the murders. Despite the lack of solid suspects, homicide detectives believed that Gerald Gaither had been murdered by a rival drug gang. By 1990, crack cocaine had hit the streets in Washington, D.C. Neighborhood gangs began to emerge throughout the city when it became clear that there was a lot of money to be made from dealing the drug. As more and more money flowed to the gangs, they resorted to violence to protect their turf from rival drug dealers. By 1994, the nation's capital was averaging nearly 400 homicides a year. DC police joined forces with the FBI and several federal agencies to combat the drug-related violence. Most of the murders remained unsolved. Hoping to rattle free a lead in the triple murder, detectives began canvassing the neighborhood where the murders took place. Neighbors were too afraid to openly cooperate. Some were willing to phone in information anonymously. One tip led to Benny Lee Lawson, one of the 3 men pulled over the night of the homicides. Investigators learned that the gold necklace taken from Andre Madison matched the one officers found on one of the men in Lawson's car. Detective Brigadini questioned Lawson.
Lawson's interview lasted about 3 or 4 hours, and different detectives went in and spent some time with Lawson in an attempt to get him to provide some sort of information about his involvement in the triple murder.
Sit down. Look at me.
Lawson repeatedly denied having any knowledge of the triple murder and refused to take a polygraph test. Investigators tried to shake his story with the false threat that they could put him at the murder scene through a DNA test of the recovered vomit. Lawson remained unswayed. After 4 hours, police had no choice but to release him. Lawson's name was run through the crime database. He had been identified by police intelligence units as a member of one of DC's most violent and feared street gangs. The 1st and Kennedy Street Crew, named after the city blocks the group lived on and controlled. Organized in 1988, the crew was involved in drug dealing, theft, kidnappings, drive-by shootings, and murder. The men with Benny Lawson the night of the murders, Moat and Germaine Graves, confronted him about the long hours he spent with the homicide detectives. They believed he had snitched and told the police about the gang's involvement in the triple murder. Lawson was infuriated by the accusation. He hated the police. He assured the 2 that he had revealed nothing to investigators. Since no arrests had been made, Graves was confident the cops had no evidence. Moat was not as sure. He declared that he would leave the country rather than be indicted for murder. Lawson vowed he would never go back to prison where he once had been raped.
What they asking?
Lawson returned home that night.
Being labeled a snitch was an insult to his loyalty towards the crew. And for a gang member on the streets, it was a death sentence. He was committed to gaining back the respect of the crew, proving that he was not a snitch. On November 22nd, 1994, a few days before Thanksgiving, Benny Lawson returned to Metropolitan Police Department headquarters. It was around 3:15 p.m. He was trying to locate the homicide department he had visited several days earlier.
Hey.
He asked two teenagers for directions.
Yeah, we're going that way, through that door right there.
They mistakenly led him to the cold case squad.
Okay, well, we'll see you
The
then.
team inside the office was made up of personnel from the MPD and the FBI, whose job was to breathe life into the growing number of unsolved homicide investigations. Inside the office were FBI agents Martha Dixon Martinez, John Kufta, Mike Miller, and Metropolitan Police Sergeant Hank Daly.
At least I'm consistent.
The teenagers, who were there for a scheduled appointment, began to speak with the officers. With no warning, Lawson pulled out his M11 assault handgun and started firing. The headquarters of the Washington, D.C. police was under attack. Repeated gunfire echoed through Washington, D.C. police headquarters. Detectives raced to the third-floor office where the shooting continued. No one knew what was going on behind the locked doors of the cold case squad room.
Come on, open up the door! Open up the door!
Across town at the FBI's Washington field office,
Hey, Tony, what do you have? All right, I'll talk to you later.
It was just a normal day like any other day, and we were monitoring one of the police radios, and we heard a call go out that there had been a shooting at MPD headquarters.
Okay, we're on our
agents
way.
quickly determined the shooting was taking place inside the cold case office, where several FBI agents were on duty.
And very quickly, we started to page our agents that were assigned to the cold case homicide squad to try to account for all of them. And as time progressed, we weren't hearing back from some of the agents, and we realized that we might have some agents inside there. And as we listened, the calls became more serious, and they were requesting assistance.
Critically wounded, Special Agent John Kufta was trapped inside the cold case squad office. When the shooting had stopped, he could hear the shouts from officers outside the office trying to get in. Help was just a few feet away.
At that point, I heard a voice tell me that they couldn't get in, and I thought to myself, you know, I'm not going to die in here. I thought of, you know, my wife, my 8-month-old daughter at the time, and I knew that if I stayed awake, if I continued to breathe, if I continued to pray, and if they got me to a hospital, I'd be alive.
Shot in the thigh, arm, stomach, neck, and chest, Kufta managed to open the door. Detectives pulled him out. The only other visible person to the rescuers was Metropolitan Police Sergeant Hank Daly. Barely clinging to life, he was dragged from the room. He was rushed outside where a helicopter waited to transport him to the hospital. Not knowing if the shooter was planning another ambush, the officers waited for the SWAT team to arrive. FBI agents and SWAT teams from around the Capitol converged on the Metropolitan Police headquarters. Yells continued from inside the room as the SWAT team arrived. Heavily armed, they entered the room. They first discovered FBI agent Mike Miller's body. His weapon was still in its holster. In an adjoining room, the SWAT team discovered the body of an unidentified black male. There was a gunshot wound on his hip and a fatal wound to his head. FBI agent Martha Dixon Martinez was the final victim found. She had gunshot wounds in her back. Near her lay the gun the shooter had likely used to kill her and the others, an M11 assault weapon. Shouts for help came from inside a closet.
Suspect in the closet, open the door slowly!
Not knowing if he was a suspect or an innocent bystander, the SWAT team apprehended one of the teens who had walked in the room before the shooting began. The other teenager had managed to flee the office earlier after being shot in the leg.
I don't even know the guy.
Supervisory Special Agent Mark Giuliano and other agents arrived at the scene.
I just remember walking through the hallway and just seeing the chaotic scene and the blood and just the total realm of emotions on everybody's face, from being focused on the mission of trying to figure out what happened and could there be other people involved.
Based on the crime scene analysis, investigators quickly reconstructed what had happened inside the room.
Getting all those shells over there?
Yes.
After Miller, Kufta, and Daly were ambushed, Agent Dixon Martinez joined the firefight. She was able to shoot the suspect in the hip before being shot in the arm, dropping her gun. The attacker took her 9mm handgun and shot the agent in the back as she tried to crawl for cover. He then put the gun to his own head and pulled the trigger. Police fingerprinted the shooter. Hopefully his identity would shed light on his actions. 2 FBI agents were dead. Sergeant Hank Daly would not survive his injuries. It would be the first time in 8 years that more than one FBI agent had been killed at a single time. It was also one of the worst attacks in history on the DC police. Agent Kufta would endure 7 major medical operations before recovering. The loss of his co-workers, Sergeant Hank Daly, Agents Mike Miller and Martha Dixon Martinez, was devastating.
Martha, Mike, and Hank were law enforcement heroes. They didn't as much lose their lives as gave their lives for a cause of justice, for a cause that they so deeply believed.
Within hours, the investigation was moving forward. The fingerprints of the shooter had come back.
When the information came up about the identity of the shooter, a detective had the information, came into a conference area where the majority of the homicide officials and detectives were, and it was announced that the shooter was Benny Lee Lawson Jr.
When homicide detective Anthony Brigadini heard the news, he realized his squad was the probable target of Lawson's rampage. Lawson and the 1st and Kennedy Street crew were the prime suspects in the triple murder of William Ragland, Darlene Hatchett, and Gerald Gaither. The shootings at headquarters showed just how far the gangs would go to protect themselves.
I think that law enforcement as a whole has learned that people operating gangs or crews are serious about what it is that they're doing. They won't stop at any cost to get their mission accomplished.
Now that federal officers had been murdered, the FBI was given jurisdiction in the investigation of the crew.
I was detailed to work jointly with the FBI to investigate the 1st and Kennedy Street crew, who at that time we felt were responsible for essentially Lawson's actions here at police headquarters.
After joining the task force, Brigadini shared what he knew about Benny Lawson and the crew. Special Agent John Kerr was on the team. For him, Benny Lawson's connection with the First and Kennedy Street crew raised serious questions.
Was this just a random act by Benny Lee Lawson, or were there accomplices? Did he have any help in this? Were there be any further attacks on agents and police? And so that was a reason that we opened up an investigation to answer those questions. Was this a conspiracy?
Investigators obtained a search warrant that night for the house Lawson had lived in.
Please get out! Please get out!
In his room, they uncovered a note written to the members of the DC homicide unit who had interrogated him, threatening to kill them.
All right, there.
Gang-related materials, violent rap lyrics, and drawings of murders were everywhere. For investigators, the items in Lawson's room reflected a fixation with violence common to virtually all gang members.
It was very obvious and disturbing that these individuals were living this lifestyle. This is the lifestyle that they were a part of. This is the lifestyle that they identified with, and they wanted to actually live the same lifestyle as the lyrics that they were writing, the pictures they were drawing, and the videos that they had.
As the victims of the shootings were laid to rest, investigators were planning their strategy to ensure that these gang members could never kill again. With 6 homicides on their hands, including 2 FBI agents and a Washington, D.C. police detective, a joint FBI MPD task force began gathering information on the First and Kennedy Street crew. FBI agent Mark Giuliano headed up the task force.
And our goal was to, A, investigate the crew because they were a violent street gang, and B, to try to determine what the motivation was of Benny Lee Lawson to come into police headquarters and do what he did, and to determine if there was anybody else involved at either end, either in helping him get there to pull off what he did, or helping the crew afterwards to cover up what had happened.
In the wake of the shootings at MPD headquarters, police pressure on gang members increased. The crew members reacted by spending less time on the streets. Building a case against them for their criminal activity would be difficult. The crew was impenetrable to outsiders. Planting an undercover agent inside the gang was too dangerous.
What we realized is that, A, we had a very close crew. That is, they took care of each other and watched each other very closely, but they were very, very leery of outsiders. They had been leery before, but they were even more leery now, and that any attempts for us to get somebody, an agent or a police officer on the inside, was not something that we were going to even attempt to do.
Instead, agents would have to gather intelligence on the crew through covert surveillance. As time went on, the gang returned to business as usual.
All right, we got some
The
activity.
FBI was watching.
We had extensive surveillance coverage of the area, day and night, identifying everyone that came onto the block, identifying who the buyers were, what time of day, where did they go when they bought, did they get into a car, did they go into an alleyway, did they do it hand to hand right there in front of you. All these things we started to take notice of and document.
Through surveillance, the leaders of the crew were soon identified. Kobe Moat and his second-in-command, Germaine Graves, the 2 men in the car with Benny Lawson the night of the first triple homicide. On the streets, Moat was known to be violent and unpredictable.
The reputation of Kobe Moat was that of fear, that he would react quickly. At times he had a temper. He always carried a gun and could be extremely violent at times.
Looking into Kobe's past, investigators discovered he shared a common history with Graves and with Benny Lawson. Their relationship developed in 1990 while serving together in Washington, D.C.'s Lorton Prison, located in Northern Virginia. They had been arrested and convicted for weapons violations while preparing for a drive-by shooting on another gang.
Do you know what happened to me?
The task force members were convinced that Moat and Graves played some role in all 6 murders. But the leaders of the 1st and Kennedy Street crew continued to keep a low profile. Agents devised a long-term strategy that would net not only Moat and Graves, but also the entire gang membership. They would slowly build a conspiracy case against the crew that would include the entire range of their criminal activities, from crack cocaine trafficking to murder.
Off the street. Well, back in 4:30. Hang on to those for me.
Agents would work themselves inside by first targeting individuals who regularly purchased their drugs from the crew. This would allow them to watch and record the gang committing crimes. And by arresting the buyers, agents would have leverage to turn them into informants.
We'd come into an area when we thought that they'd be the most active in selling drugs. And in order to identify someone and hopefully get lucky, catch someone with some drugs, and maybe force them to work for us at some point.
Some of the buyers arrested were unwilling to cooperate at first. The dangerous reputations of Moat and Graves were well known. But the threat of long prison sentences was powerful. The FBI strategy paid off. Threatened with significant jail time, one of the biggest drug suppliers to the crew decided to become an informant. At the FBI's direction, he would generate conversation with crew members about their illegal activities.
And he'd have conversations with them, and they like to brag about what they've done. And at our direction, he would bring something up, say an old drive-by shooting or an old murder, or something about drug dealing. And these individuals would just start to talk about it. They'd talk about who was involved, what happened. All of this was being recorded.
Through the informant and the recordings, agents learned that Moat, Graves, and Lawson had killed previously. Less than 3 weeks before breaking into William Ragland's house, they had kidnapped and murdered another rival drug dealer.
What up, boy? What up? Huh?
William Red Billy Woods was a well-known dealer from a rival gang. Germaine Graves arranged to lure Woods to his mother's house. Once there, Moat, Graves, and Lawson robbed him and beat him. Fearing the rival gang would retaliate against the crew, they shot him 3 times and dumped his body in the road. Agents also heard testimony from another informant that further implicated Moat, Graves, and Lawson in the triple murder at William Ragland's house.
Down where? 1st and Kennedy? Huh?
He overheard Benny, Kobe, and Germaine Graves talking about the triple homicide. And one of the things that he mentioned that they were giving Benny a hard time for was the fact that he threw up at the scene of the triple homicide. That's something that only the homicide detectives knew and that we knew and had not been released to the public.
The information was only circumstantial, but months of surveillance and informant testimony gave agents enough evidence to obtain a search warrant for the homes of Kobe Moat and Germaine Graves. They would strike at Germaine Graves first. A heavily armed SWAT team made their way inside his house.
Please get down!
No one was there.
Oh, one more.
Agents would not leave empty-handed.
We were able to locate a 9mm gun, semi-automatic pistol, as well as some crack cocaine, what we believe to be crack cocaine. One of the members on the squad took the information that we got from the gun and put together an affidavit for an arrest warrant based on the fact that it was a convicted felon in possession of a firearm.
For several weeks, Graves eluded investigators. They continued surveillance, hoping that he would turn up.
We really didn't know where he was. We had some ideas. We knew he was still in the metro area, but obviously he knew once we hit his house that we were looking for him, and word was out on the street that we were looking for him, so he was keeping a very low profile. During one of our very standard surveillances, I saw an individual who walked like Germaine Graves, just from the back. I couldn't see his face. So I asked one of the units to drive around the block and just take a look at the guy. And the next thing I know, they jumped out and arrested him. They knew as soon as they pulled around the corner it was him. And you know, he was arrested right on the street corner of First and Kennedy.
Just a few months after the first triple murder, Graves was off the streets. Making a case against Kobe Moat would prove more difficult. With the arrest of gang member Germaine Graves on a weapons charge, the FBI task force was one step closer to taking the First and Kennedy crew off of the Washington, D.C. streets. Now agents were ready to serve a search warrant on the home of the crew's leader, Kobe Moat. A SWAT team entered the house Kobe shared with his twin brother Kareem. The two never knew what hit them. Investigators found gang-related documents, drawings, and writings, and a small amount of marijuana. They found no guns or evidence of the murders. But that was not their prime interest. The task force hunted for evidence of a larger crime pattern.
Gang videos, bad videos everywhere.
Most of the evidence we were looking for at the time was list of crew members, shirts that they all wore with the logo on them, pictures, phone books, things that would associate this group together.
The twins were arrested on drug charges and taken in for booking. Kobe's time in jail was brief. Only his brother Kareem's fingerprints were on the bag of pot. Kobe was released and the possession charge was dropped. Agents were determined to see him back behind bars.
You know what?
Investigators continued developing informants from within the gang.
I know you're supplying these guys with drugs, with guns.
They got the break they were looking for. Facing jail time on a drug charge, a member of the First and Kennedy crew agreed to cooperate. Finally, investigators learned the answer to the question that had most plagued them. Why did Benny Lee Lawson go into police headquarters and kill two FBI agents and an MPD sergeant?
Yeah, Jimmy.
It started the night Kobe Moat, Germaine Graves, and Benny Lee Lawson broke into the home of William Ragland. The trio's plan had been to rob drug dealer Gerald Gaither. Germaine Graves became frustrated by Gaither's refusal to cooperate, and he snapped, killing 3 of the residents. Overwhelmed, Benny Lawson vomited outside the home. To Moat, it was a sign of weakness.
Jimmy, man, what's going on?
The informant continued. When Lawson was brought in for questioning by investigators, Moat was sure Lawson had snitched. He began to tell others in the crew that Lawson was cooperating.
He was sitting around, you know, we was at the barbershop.
Benny hated snitches. He hated them. He actually pistol whipped one individual whom he thought was snitching, and probably hated him more than any other crew member. So to have Kobe think that he was ratting or snitching on him, and to go out to First and Kennedy Street crew and have the rest of the crew look at him as a snitch, we believe was more than he could handle.
Really?
For agents and investigators, it was now clear that Kobe Moat, Germaine Graves, and Benny Lawson had committed the triple homicide. Agents took their case to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Through these conversations and the cooperating witnesses, plus the information that that the police had from the car stop the night of the triple murder, left us no doubt that they had enough to get a murder warrant for these guys for the triple murder.
It was also clear that Kobe Moat was part of the reason Benny Lee Lawson murdered 3 investigators inside the Metropolitan Police Department. Agents finally felt ready to go before a grand jury and present their conspiracy case against Kobe Moat and the entire crew. Among the 57 charges that were handed down were indictments for nearly a dozen homicides, drug trafficking, armed robbery, kidnapping, and racketeering. Already in custody, Graves was charged with 3 counts of felony murder. An arrest warrant was issued for Kobe Moat. Investigators returned to his house. This time, he wasn't home. The closets had been emptied. The place looked like it had been abandoned. In the trash, investigators found a receipt for a plane ticket. It appeared that Kobe had kept his promise to flee rather than go to jail.
And the plane ticket was for just a few days before we hit the place. And the plane ticket was from New York to Moscow. And at that point, we knew that Kobe had most likely fled not only the area, but most likely the country.
Moat was one step ahead of the agents. They tried to pick up his trail in Russia, but he was nowhere to be found. Investigators discovered there was a flight departing to Africa soon after he landed in Moscow. A check of the passenger list revealed nothing.
There you are, sir.
Agents grew increasingly more frustrated. Moat was slipping away. For 6 months, FBI agents and Washington, D.C. police tried to track fugitive Kobe Moat. He could be hiding anywhere. An international manhunt was underway.
We literally went months without a break. We went through hundreds and hundreds of documents that we had obtained during search warrants, during various parts of the investigation, looking for overseas phone numbers, looking for overseas relatives, once again, without a break.
After several months, Agent John Kerr got a break. Through an informant, he uncovered the name of an ex-girlfriend of Kobe's.
We had come up with addresses for one of the addresses we came up with. We subpoenaed the toll records, and sure enough, we found a collect call from Kenya on one of her toll records. And this was shortly after he would have arrived in Africa.
Agents brought her in for questioning. She repeatedly denied knowing anything about Kobe Moat's whereabouts.
He's out killing people.
Agents confronted her about the phone records. If she continued to withhold information, they would serve her with a grand jury subpoena. She decided to cooperate. She told investigators that Kobe had in fact called her several times from Nairobi, Kenya. He had not called her recently. She believed he might have moved on to Tanzania. The information was immediately passed on overseas.
You have to know where he is.
Moat's phone call to his ex-girlfriend had originated from a hotel in Nairobi. A U.S. Department of State regional security officer in Kenya followed the lead.
We know he stayed in your hotel.
The hotel owner said he had no recollection of Kobe Moat. Agent Giuliano received the news.
And it becomes very, very frustrating because, once again, we're getting no new information. We're not getting a break. And we know that the only tie that we have now is this hotel in Nairobi, Kenya. So we go back to the regional security officers and ask them to go back out and re-interview the individual.
Again, the hotel owner insisted he knew nothing about Kobe Moat. When shown photographs, he seemed to hesitate. The regional security officer kept pressing. Finally, the owner asked for a guarantee that if he gave information, Kobe would never be told. The regional security officer agreed to protect him. He said Kobe had in fact been to his hotel, but he had left several months ago. He gave the security officer a number that Kobe had called while at the hotel. The call was to the East African country of Tanzania. It took agents a few days to determine why the hotel owner protected the 1st and Kennedy Street crew leader.
What we determined is that Kobe's mother was educated in Jamaica, and during that process she had befriended several individuals who ended up going to various parts of the world. She had an association with this hotel owner in Nairobi, and she had made the contact to protect Kobe and to help him.
You have a nice day. Thank you.
The phone number in Tanzania eventually led investigators to a local college professor. He was a friend of Kobe Moat's mother. The FBI asked the Tanzanian National Police Department to follow the lead. The professor was unwilling to cooperate with the authorities.
Certainly not a student.
The National Police began their own investigation into Kobe Moat's whereabouts in their country. As the search for the gang leader intensified in Tanzania, agents and police in Washington, D.C. continued to build their case against the 1st and Kennedy crew. They amassed volumes of evidence through surveillance and informant testimony over the previous year.
There were about 20 to 25 Metropolitan Police Department officers and FBI special agents working on this investigation around the clock, whether it was determining phone records or uncovering new murders that these guys had committed over the years.
On September 14th, 1995, officers and agents executed over a dozen arrest warrants. They searched for any indication of the gang leader's whereabouts in Africa. They found nothing. They collected additional evidence of a criminal enterprise. They confiscated financial records, guns, drugs, and gang paraphernalia.
Stay right there. Don't move.
Some of those arrested agreed to cooperate in exchange for less jail time. Investigators were slowly taking all of the gang members off the streets. In Tanzania, the search for Kobe Moat was heating up. The National Police Force developed their own informants and learned that Moat had in fact been in contact with the university professor.
I don't know anything about Kobe. Perhaps I could take you on a small...
They returned to interview him. He once more denied knowing anything about Kobe. Threatening the Jamaican-born professor with deportation, the Tanzanian police convinced him to reconsider. Finally, he admitted to helping Moat find a place to hide out. He offered to take the authorities there.
And this hut is literally out in the middle of the tribespeople who are living in straw huts or actually just living on the ground, right amongst the wild animals and amongst where they grow their crops.
It was the last place on earth authorities would have thought to look for Moat. Unaware that the professor had betrayed his location, Moat was surprised to see the police approaching his hut. He set fire to anything that could potentially identify him. But the police quickly moved in and doused the flames.
What did I do?
While they searched for a reason to place him in custody, they never told Moat why they were there.
They also determined that out in the back, he's growing a small amount of marijuana, or what they call bangi. And in that part of the country, it's against the law. And the penalty is 10 years in prison or $100. So they brought him in based on that premise, telling him that he was going to be incarcerated for that.
Investigators in Washington received the news that Moat was in custody, but time was working against them. The Tanzanian police could only hold Kobe on the possession charge for a short period. As a drug trafficker, Moat had plenty of cash on hand to pay the $100 fine. After days of diplomatic wrangling, the arrangements for Moat's extradition to the United States were finalized. Agent Giuliano and Detective Brigadini traveled to Tanzania to take him into custody. Investigators were finally face to face with the man who had eluded them for over a year.
When he came in, Kobe looked tired, and he looked like he had been defeated. We explained to him what the charges were, that he was being removed to the United States, that he had been indicted in the United States for a variety of charges, including several counts of first-degree murder and racketeering.
Moat was on his way back to the United States, where he and fellow gang members faced 57 indictments. Kobe Moat and Germaine Graves would be convicted on all counts. They were each sentenced to 35 years in a federal prison. Moat's capture in Africa allowed investigators to get the remaining First and Kennedy crew members off the streets.
When we brought Kobe back to the United States, he just had a domino effect on the rest of the crew members. Eventually, every crew member pled guilty because they felt and actually told us that once they saw that we had found Kobe in East Africa and brought him back, that they felt they didn't stand a chance.
FBI agents and DC police worked tirelessly to bring justice to the victims of gang violence. But this case was also personal. Only after the entire gang was in jail could they have a sense of closure and feel they had vindicated the deaths of their friends. Sergeant Hank Daly and FBI agents Mike Miller and Martha Dixon Martinez. For Agent John Kufta, who barely survived the attack at police headquarters, the implications of this case were far-reaching.
When this group was locked up, I think it sent a clear message to other criminal organizations out there operating in the District of Columbia and in that tri-state area there, that the FBI and the DC police will go to whatever lengths are necessary if it takes them to other continents to track you down and find you and bring you back to the United States to justice.